With the iPhone 7 coming up, I've been comparing previous generation to generation updates so that I could find the biggest generation to generation update prior to the 7. We already know that the iPhone 6 and 6S were both the same size upgrades, but since I have the 6, I will be comparing its upgrade against the iPhone 5S's upgrade. The iPhone 5S had the same dimensions as the iPhone 5 did, of 123.8 millimeters by 58.6 millimeters by 7.6 millimeters and 112 grams. But the iPhone 6 was bigger and heavier, 138.1 millimeters by 67 millimeters by 6.9 millimeters at 129 grams. The iPhone 5 comes in whole new color options, space gray, silver, or gold, instead of black and white. The reason why they switched black to this space gray, which I'm showing you here, and white to the silver, was because there was a scuffing problem, and it was also a dust magnet. With the 5S, it has new metal that will not have these problems. It also has a redesigned home button so that I can fit a fingerprint scanner into it. It is flat instead of concave and has no icon in the center. The iPhone 6 has a much more curved design than the 5S did. It has all aluminum on the back instead of just aluminum in the middle and the top and bottom being glass. The sleep-wake button has been moved from the top to the side on the 6, and the volume buttons have been redesigned. The camera now protrudes. It was definitely a bigger design change on the 6. The iPhone 5S has the same screen as the 5 did, but the 6 has an improved screen. It has gone from 640 by 1136 to 750 by 1334. It has gone from 4 inches to 4.7 inches. It has a contrast ratio that has gone from 800 to 1 to 1300 to 1. And it has 1400 to 1 on the regular 6, 1300 to 1 on the 6 Plus, and it has dual domain pixels for wide-angle viewing. The camera is an area of major improvement on the 5S. It introduces True Tone Flash, which is a dual LED flash. The iPhone 5 only had one LED. It introduces things such as burst mode, 10 pictures in 1 second, and slow-mo video, which is video at 120 frames per second, 720p, and it is slow. The iPhone 6 can record in 60 frames per second video instead of 30 frames per second video, and 240 frames per second slow motion instead of 120 frames per second slow motion, although the resolutions are the same. Both have bigger pixels, but the iPhone 6 introduces focus pixels, and the 6 Plus introduces optical image stabilization. With the new shooting modes and the True Tone Flash, the 5S is definitely a bigger update in terms of the camera. But when it comes to the front-facing camera, the iPhone 6 actually is a bigger update because it introduces burst mode to the front-facing camera too. The processor is 64-bit in the iPhone 5S compared to 32-bit on the 5. It is actually the first 64-bit phone ever. This makes it the most innovative iPhone because the original iPhone, there was actually something with multi-touch before that. The LG product, it was only 1 month older, but it was still not first. This is the first 64-bit phone, so this makes it the most innovative iPhone. So the iPhone 6 had an increase in speed from 1.3 to 1.4 gigahertz, but the 64-bit doubled the speed. This only increased it by 25%. The iPhone 5S also introduces the M7 Mouse & Co processor. So the iPhone 5S can now track your steps along with a number of other things using the M7. The 6 introduces a barometer, allowing you to see how many flights of stairs you've climbed. But I would say that the 5S is a much bigger improvement in terms of processor. The iPhone 5 and 5S both last 40 minutes on audio, but the iPhone 6 lasts 50 minutes on audio. They also both last 10 minutes on video, but the iPhone 6 lasts 11 minutes on video. The iPhone 5 lasts 8 hours on 3G talk time. The iPhone 5S lasts 10 hours, and the iPhone 6 lasts 14 hours. The iPhone 8 lasts 8 hours. The iPhone 5 lasts 8 hours. The iPhone 5S lasts 10 hours, and the iPhone 6 actually also lasts 10 hours. So the Wi-Fi browsing 10 on the 5, 10 on the 5S, 11 on the 6. Standby is 225 hours on the 5, 250 hours on the 5S, and on the 6. So there is clearly a bigger gap between the 5S and the 6. Touch ID introduced in the 5S and greatly updated in the 6. In fact, the Touch ID in the 5S requires that your finger is completely clean, and it often doesn't recognize your finger. Some people think that the Touch ID in 5S is unusable. The 6 greatly improved Touch ID and made it more usable. The 6 also introduces Apple Pay, which allows you to use your phone as a credit card. In terms of additional features, I'd say that the 6 has more additional features than the 5S, well, not counting the processing and camera features. In addition to all of the new features, iPhone 6 introduces VoLTE, Voice over LTE. It allows you to make calls over your LTE network. The iPhone 6 has more improvements in terms of the design, the screen, the new features, the cellular, the battery. Almost everything is a bigger improvement on the 6, but the 5S has a much bigger camera improvement and a much bigger processor improvement. But in terms of the upgrades, I'd say that the iPhone 6 is actually a bigger upgrade than the 5S was, although the iPhone 5S is still more innovative than the 6 is.